where you need to you need to take away player bias sometimes. And you need to understand, how do I accumulate the most amount of assets in a system where there are 31 other teams also not only trying to accumulate assets, but also every team is given a specific amount. So if that's draft picks, players on a roster, whatever. And your job is to take what you are given at any specific window of time and accumulate that, and then reach a peak, and then hopefully you can compete in a way that other teams aren't prepared to kind of meet you at.
Also, toss in the fact that most of the teams in the league right now have cap issues regardless, and anything that's going to be moved is cash in, cash out.
Yep.
All the
100%.
time.
So there was this one debate that has been rip roaring, and where it's about JT Miller.
Oh,
Ryan, I have a question for you. Has JT Miller given you any inclination or any feeling then the off season of 2023, he is wanting to take a kind of question hometown, a little bit of a discount on a longer term deal until he's 35 to 36 potentially with the Vancouver Canucks?
I don't
From
have
just
any...
strictly his attitude. Like, I'm not saying he's had a tremendously bad attitude or anything, not saying that, but I'm saying from looking at the trajectory of his career from New York to Tampa to now, where he's wanted to compete. He got traded from Tampa immediately before they won 2 straight Stanley Cups. He came here, made the bubble, did the bubble, had the horrific COVID season, missed, and all this stuff. And yeah, he's a competitor, whatever. He's going to be a 30-year-old. And are you really expecting JT Miller at that point?
I don't expect
in terms of in terms of just odds of him re-signing with the Vancouver Canucks. And not only that, are you willing to sign a forward, technically a UFA forward at 30 years of age, to a 5 to 6 year deal?
With what is with the work that's on the table right now for whoever is going to be GM, for the contracts they have to deal with and navigate through and re-sign. There's not, again, we're not, I feel like with JT Miller, any conversation about him right now, it's nothing personal. It's 100% under the business side of it's under the business umbrella of this game.
Mm-hmm.
He, at his age, where he's gone, how he's performed, do I expect him to take some sort of sweetheart deal, a 4 or 5 year deal to stay with the Canucks and maybe be the contender? Not necessarily, because I look at it right now where he's got one of the better deals. Look at a point a game guy making under $5 million. There's so many contending teams that could benefit from that.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's making 5.275 if I remember correctly. Mm-hmm. He's making a little bit north of 5.
And you brought it up before the Christmas break, and I look at him like the way Jim Rutherford looked at the real deal James Neal. And it's just like, this is a guy that's having a good stretch of years, but how is that going to look? What's he going to look like in 4 years? And hell, he cleared waivers this week. Like,
well, I mean, let's not totally throw James Neal under the, I mean, he went out after Pittsburgh to Nashville, had good years, also had a good year in the
great year in Vegas as a specialist.
Yeah,
goes to Calgary, doesn't fit in, goes to Edmonton, doesn't fit in. I'm not saying they're comparable players in the least, but I'm just like, you notice some similarities in their career trajectory. And I'm not completely sold on JT Miller long term, but in a way that I'm looking at how the Canucks can improve themselves now, what they can do with JT Miller now. And we've had 8 years of front office that looks at tomorrow, or they're not looking 7 years down the road when they trade for Louis, or they sign Louis Eriksson, or they trade for Oliver Ekman-Larsson. And if there is a deal to be made that's going to make this team leaps and bounds better, it's going to be a big loss for sure. But you got to look at the dollars and cents. It's a business move, and if they can find something, if they can trade him to, I don't know, a Toronto or somebody with money and get a hell of a return, you got to do it.
Well, my mentality is that you have to be really able to make some very hard decisions in saying there are 4 to 5 players at this bar that is, we only have 5. We can't say, oh, well, we have 8 core players. No, you need to say, okay, we need to make a really hard decision and say the 5 core pieces we have, let's say Thatcher Demko, Quinn Hughes, Elias Patterson, Brock Besser, and of course Tucker Pullman. And so no shade on Tucker Pullman. He's in the show where we have a hockey podcast. So, you have to, maybe Bo Horvath at this stage in terms of age and cap sits at that position.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you probably put JT Miller in that core position now, today, right now. But in 2 to 3 years from now, is he going to, in the time that you're hitting that peak, is he going to be the player that he is today? Maybe he regresses a little bit. He's not going to completely fall off the cliff. But these are the kind of tough questions that you really need to ask. And it's a very polarizing thing, because a lot of people will get, I don't know, this like visceral reaction, like how can you trade? He's a heart and soul guy. How can you do that? It's like, yeah, you need to, these are decisions that make championships.
Yeah.
These are decisions that make championship rosters and championship teams, in terms of being able to look at something in a business mentality and thinking, okay, if I trade JT Miller right now, he has 2 years remaining, shy north of 5, to a contending team. They are getting him for 2 playoff runs. Massive. It's not a rental price. This is you have control on this player. You are getting, a first, a prospect, and a young player, a young roster player.
You're getting a lot.
You think about how you can trade one thing to potentially fix 3 holes. One of them being, do you go out and get a young right-handed shot defenseman? Do you go and get a prospect that's a little bit down the line that you like? Do you accumulate another first to use in whatever way you kind of seem, you want to use it? Do you want to use it to draft capital, or do you want to use it as trade bait? Whatever, whatever you want to give you flexibility. And then also you get that cap space back. So it's just these, like, I hope that when people, you're hearing the suggestion about having a discussion about trading specific players, like Pedersen is a different one. Pedersen is that's
not even a discussion. Even if you needed to trade him, the dumbest possible time is to trade him right now, where he's not having this best stretch.
You have control on Elias Patterson. And I also do need to remind people, like, guys, go look up Nathan McKinnon's first few years in the show.
Oh, yeah.
I think people forget this. I think people think that Nathan McKinnon has always been this like baseline 80-point scorer. Go look up his first season, pretty great debut season. Look at the 2 to 3 consecutive seasons after that.
55-point guy, afterthought on Team North America, the young gun team in the World Cup, which needs to return, as we'll discuss a bit later. But he's young as hell. He's, dealing with he's learning how to be a pro in a pandemic. He's dealt with a coaching change. He just dealt with it with a tough love, less minutes, prove me wrong kind of coach. He's figuring it out with a guy that's given him all the time in the world, giving him all the opportunities and working with them. Now, like, again, it's December. This feels like this has been about a 4-year season.
Yeah, I feel.
But it's December. What's January? Well, never mind.
Dude, who cares? Time has no meaning. What are we doing?
It's not the time. And even if it was the time, you don't trade a player like that in a slump like this. And it's just when you have, especially if it's a JT. I'm not even entertaining the thought, but you trade JT Miller.
There's two. Okay, so just to differentiate between these two, because these are two different moves.
Yeah.
If you're looking at, I'm just gonna go for it, and if people fucking hate me for it, I'm just gonna
send hate tweets to @Arash Marzadeh on
we
Twitter.
need to have, these are discussions we need to have, so we're gonna have them, guys, because we need to have
these. You know what it is, Arash? You need to have these difficult but very reasonable discussions, because the last guys that worked here didn't seem to have them.
No, I don't think they understood the idea of what a discussion was. They wanted autonomy and having a collaborative discussion. And like, I had 4 years of performing arts training, and the one thing in my fourth year, we did a collaborative thing where, again, kind of an unmitigated disaster, but it was like 22 of us were all the directors of a show.
Oh God.
And I'm like, it made me love like dictatorship. It's really weird. I was like, man, I really just want one person to be in charge, or one person to be like, yes, no.
It makes you appreciate somebody that's confident in their decision making.
Yeah, but also
that can benefit everybody.
Yeah, and it's also just the idea of like having someone. I would love having someone in the room that is able to make the decision, but before they do, they listen to the other 21 people, and then they make the decision.
Mm-hmm.
And as opposed to the other way around, where it's like, you're never going to get it done. Anyway, the moves involving so JT Miller and Bo Horvath. Again, love Bo, but what indication has he fully given you that if they do not turn this around, that come up when he's a UFA in 2023, he's going to be like, yeah, sign me up again. I'm 28. Let's go. And that's what I think people need to understand. This isn't an idea of, if we offer them a contract, they will sign it because they're being offered a contract and will sign them.
Mm-hmm.
That isn't how this works. So you look at JT, you look at Bo, and you
short names,
big players, short names, really, really, really good names. And you look at the assets that you can get back, and not have to worry about re-signing them in 2023 if you can re-sign them.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they in their minds, depending on what happens this year and next year, if they have put in their minds, when I'm testing UFA, I'm going into the UFA waters.
Yeah.
There's nothing you can do. You can't go to the NHLPA and file a grievance. Like, hey, no, Bo Horvath's ours. He can't go sign anywhere. No, you can't do that. So that's a hard decision that you have to make, that if you seriously explained it,
mm-hmm.
majority of the people in this market would understand, because the last thing people want is for the last 8 years to happen again. Now, Elias Patterson is different because you have control.
Mm-hmm.
So the same thing said about going to the NHLPA and filing a grievance. You control him as an RFA. And you have time in the next 3 years to see where his trajectory kind of climbs to. Before the 3 years is up, he has 1 more year as a UFA, and from there, that's when you make the decision. That's where you're like, okay, well, this player is obviously either surpasses our expectations or isn't what we exactly needed him to be, so we can move on from this. So Elias Patterson is not a decision you have to make now. The other glaring one that we've discussed is Brock Besser, strictly due to the fact that, Ryan,
he's got to go.
I love Brock. You love
mm-hmm.
Brock. Are you paying him north of $8 million?
Absolutely not.
And are you doing that on a long-term deal?
No.
Okay, so you're not doing that on a long-term deal. Are you doing that on a 1 year? Because if you do that, if you qualify him, he's a UFA.
I don't want to do that either.
So you're screwed. So like
These are the tough decisions
I
you
think
got to do.
these are tough decisions that you need to just you just need to understand why people are thinking about making them, because that's how you get better.
And
This is how you get better. You do not get better in a cap, almost like a capitalist business, by not at least thinking of red paper clipping. Like, it's a very simple idea. You have an asset, you trade it for another thing, another thing, another thing, until you grow and grow and grow, and you have a house. And you wonder, how the hell did I do that? It's like, it's supply, demand, want, need, time, expectation, leverage, desperation, whatever. Taking all these things into consideration, making really hard choices. And I love the run that they've gone on right now. I love it. I didn't talk to you about it, but like, my parents, holy shit, Ryan.
Yeah.
My parents, I sat down with my folks watching a game with one of the Bruce There It Is games. Keep it to how about we keep it to a Bruce There It Is. And they're just invigoration. My dad's 74. My mom is just reaching her 70s.
Yeah.
The reinvigoration brought so much energy to me to get onto Twitter, engage even more, be happy that I'm part of this. And I think I've reached a point as an adult, and I think our listeners also have reached a point in their lives where they've dealt with a lot of shit for the last 8 years. And if they have to make really difficult decisions, this fan base will understand, but the fan base needs to also just broaden their mind. It's like, I always talk about, sorry, I'm ranting, but I'm a little fired up. There's one thing I've really noticed is some people have a critical inability to think past the one very thin line of film that is created when you boil milk. Like, they cannot think of the entire pot of milk below it, and they can't have any depth level of thinking outside. Me, like JT Miller offer contract, he signed this NHL 22. They can't understand that. Look at the history. Look at him hunching over the net in the bubble. Look at him having to come out and back up this team when they are riddled with COVID, when the organization wouldn't.
Yeah.
If you think for a second that stuff does not have an effect on a person's mind going into a decision where 31, like after you potentially are breaking up with someone and they're asking you to come back, and you're looking at the 31 other hinge matches that might look a little, oh my God, this guy makes his own pasta noodles. Oh, that's kind of cool.
31 people, each of them offering you just a little bit something different, and a little bit more.
Just something different. Right. And you just have to look at it that way. So before you get to that point where the only thing you have left is hope that they come back to you, like, you hope that in the sit down with their family and their agent, that Vancouver is the choice at that point. You have to be proactive.
Yeah.
You have to take the initiative into your hands and act on it. And I just really hope that the stuff that Jim Rutherford has said in terms of accumulating draft picks, getting younger players in, that's where they need to go. And I hope that these discussions about these certain players are being had right now.
I think that people look at the Canucks and, like, it's easy to look at the Leafs. It's like, well, they had 4 guys that they had to sign no matter what. I don't say that the Canucks don't have 4 incredibly dynamic goal scoring offensive threats that are just, tops in the league. They have 2. The funny thing you keep hearing is any media availabilities, any comments in the media, it's about 2 guys. It's Thatcher Demko and it's Quinn Hughes. And we love this team, but I'm starting to get the sense that a lot of it is expendable if you need to make the best possible move. Now, we're not saying they're going to move everybody, but like, outside of 43 and 35, there's something there. And
yeah, I don't think you hit the nail right. And you know what? I'll be totally honest with you. I always say, it's funny. I always say that. I'll be totally honest with you. Like I'm going to say something
I've
really
been
hot
bullshitting
take.
on this podcast for the last year, but now I'm going to be
Yeah,
serious.
I have to check myself with that. You know, you look at the equation of Niels Höglander and Vasily Podkolzin
Mm-hmm.
at their age of how they are producing and how they play. You really have to give them a little bit more respect in that we're talking about the window and the trajectory.
Yeah.
That they are now the crucial next pieces strictly based off of, okay, now you can offer them a Brit, you're not Vasily Podkolzin, his next contract isn't going to be an 8x8, but you're going to give him, a 4 or 5 year at 4 or whatever,
Yes.
just to consolidate. Niels Höglander, kind of the same thing. That's where the value is created. It's not until their UFA years where you're not going to really exactly get value because you're paying market price because there's no control there. So you have to put a bit more respect on their names in terms of going forward. Like you said, everyone else, you just need to sit down and have a honest conversation as a business and as a management group and say this is not about us not liking JT Miller as a player, not liking Bo Horvath as a captain, not liking Elias Patterson as a cornerstone player, not liking Brock Besser as a point producing winger.
Yeah.
But just saying like we if we want to get better and we want to get to the position that you look at Tampa, you look at other teams that have accumulated so many assets through their farm system. And
do you want to be Tampa or do you want to be the Calgary Flames?
I mean, hey, listen, Calgary's not doing too bad right now.
Well,
But that's Daryl. Daryl got in there, he threw out the Nintendo Wii in the locker room. He's like, get the shit out of here.
That was a last ditch effort from Daryl.
He's like, you want to play? I got some hay bales in the back, Johnny.
I got a whole bus of Sutter boys looking for help.
Yeah. So yeah, I think this is a really well-deserved time for Canucks fans in that, listen, they're a game above 500. This is amazing. This is fantastic. But just like, I need to be careful here. Just like 2014 and 2015 was that mirage.
Yeah.
You have to respect Jim Rutherford for coming out and saying, this is great, the run that we've gone on. This is fantastic. But we have to be realistic and kind of know where we need to get better.